Hello and welcome to the Football League Weekly, a weekly podcast looking into everything Football League. This week we have a jammed pack episode for you, a couple of managerial departures for us to sink our teeth into, ASAP Rocky allegedly taking over at Tranmere Rovers, and before we get into anything else, how are you, Rhys? And it feels as though it's been quite a while, doesn't it?
We were just saying, weren't we? Sort of in the green room before we came live. It must have been what, 3, maybe even 4 weeks since we last sat here and done an episode, which feels mad, don't it? With Football League Weekly, perhaps we should rename it to Football League Monthly. Sort of at this rate. But it has been a while. But having said that, sort of looking for sort of big breaking news to talk about in the Eveners podcast, and there isn't a sort of wealth of it, is there? I know you got the 2 managerial changes we'll get on to. You get ASAP Rocky or $AP. We're showing how much into rap music we actually are with these descriptions, but not too much has happened, does it?
No, and I'm far too white to really understand any of the ASAP stuff. So I'm going to completely expose myself when we talk about that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been weird, hasn't it? I mean, again, we have the managerial departures to sink our teeth into, and I want to open up the show by talking about some new guidelines that Ipswich Town have released. I know Ipswich are in the Premier League; they might be in a championship next year, but it's basically on prohibited match day items, so things that you're not allowed to bring to the game. Obviously, they said no bags larger than A4, no baby buggies or prams, no video equipment, no large cameras, no smoking, no drinking glasses, canned drinks, anything like that, knives, fireworks. But they've banned flags from the stadium and umbrellas, but most importantly, they've banned flags from the stadium. How bizarre is that? Do you reckon that's something that most football clubs are going to start banning now?
Mate, this is utter woke nonsense at its best, isn't it? This is the epitome of utter woke nonsense by Sean Dyche. I think you look through the list, and the ones that sort of stood out for me was no food, which seems very, very strange. You're not allowed to bring food in. Obviously, I get you can't bring in, a foot-long Subway and just start munching through that during the game. That would be very weird. But how far does no food actually extend to? Is it saying you can't bring in a Whisper bar or something? I'm really showing how healthy I eat here, aren't I? Exactly that. It's I want to say I do eat healthy and I do eat fruit, but then I realize this is a visual podcast and you can see the weight in my face. So it probably isn't going to be too convincing, but I do live off chocolate bars. And in fact, this is the people in the chat, people watching, don't judge me. This is the closest I get to eating fruit. For those of you who can't see, it's a Terry's chocolate orange bar, and that's probably the closest I get to eating anywhere near my 5 a day. But they've banned food, and that seems to be sort of something really strange. They've also banned drinks, haven't they? And you can't take in anything.
No Coke bottles,
No Coke bottles,
Fanta, anything
500
like
mils.
that.
Yeah, anything 500 mils, wasn't it? And you can't take in cans, you can't take in bottles, 500 mils. It just seems a little bit strange. I know that we're saying they should be buying from stadium, and I get that point from your ownership. That makes sense. You want people to buy inside the ground, but at £3.50 for a bottle of Coke and a mortgage to get a Portman pie, especially at Portman Road, it's just not worth it, is it? And surely, how are they going to enforce this? I mean, even one of them is no umbrellas. How mad are we getting here?
Yeah, and once upon a time, like the Portman pies were really popular. They were actually quite good, but nowadays, that is out there for debate, I guess I should say. So yeah, I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and I wonder how long it is before clubs start following as well. No persistent standing, which I think is fair enough. I still reckon Ipswich. Do you reckon more clubs should implement safe standing? Because I'd love to see that at Ipswich.
Yeah, I've always said that I'm a big fan of safe standing, and if I could sit in a safe standing area, then believe you me, I'd be the first one. Yeah, so I just think it creates more of an atmosphere. People may or may not know. I went down to Cambridge last weekend, and I know Cambridge is a little bit of an exception because it is a terraced. In the Newmarket Road, and it's a terraced, so you can't sit down. But the atmosphere that standing up actually creates, I think, is something that's quite unique. I don't think it's much of a coincidence that more and more grounds are heading towards having a safe standing area. Let's be honest, the only team in the world who are tin pot enough to have a safe standing area and still sit down in the area is our friends up the road, isn't it? Good old Norwich, who have a safe standing area where they sit in. I am not making that up. That is genuine. There are pictures online. But for me, it's part of the new sort of modern stadium bowls, isn't it? I think we're seeing it with Everton at the moment, and I know this isn't EFL related. We're seeing it with Everton, aren't we? They've just moved from Goodison
Yeah.
Park, the process of moving from Goodison Park into a controversially a horrible ground. I detest it. I hate it. I think it looks exactly like Tottenham's ground. There's nothing different about it. There's no character. There's no aesthetics. It just looks crap.
And I'm having a few internet problems, so whilst I quickly reconnect to my network, tell people where they can find your latest Football League Weekly Travels vlog and what can they expect from your latest vlog. I will be back in approximately 1 minute.
See, this is why people tune into Football League Weekly. It is not a football podcast that we deliver without some internet issues. If you guys were here for the watch along we done Leeds v Burnley, then you'll know exactly how good our internet can actually be. Anyway, on to the vlogs. And so Saturday just gone. There was a little bit of a delay in getting this vlog out because I went to Cambridge against Exeter. And now I sort of try to center the podcast around sort of Gary Monk and try and sort of center him being sort of like the main feature in the pod because I was quite surprised that there wasn't more pressure on him. And typically, I got home from the game, recorded everything the next morning, sat here, done a mini review of the game, perfect, edited it all, got it looking brand spanking perfect. And what happens? I checked Twitter. Gary Monk's been sacked. So I had to go back through all the vlog, re-edit it, take out all the parts where I talk about Gary Monk, and then re-record the review. Hence why it took a little bit of a delay in coming out this week. But this week, let me know what you think below. I tried a different angle of it this week. I tried to make it more as if you were there at the ground with me. So it wasn't so much of the camera being on me and me rambling and talking as much as you guys know I can do. I mean, that's, casting on back to the first episode, I was stood there in Birmingham and I think I talked for about 12 minutes straight. So I think I was a little bit intense. So I tried to make this episode a bit more as if you guys were there with me. You got the angle that I had, which wasn't the best. Annoyingly, when I booked the ticket, it didn't say it was a restricted view ticket. It was a restricted view seat, though, however. A giant pole right down my right-hand side. But I did try to film, so that wasn't an issue. Just letting me know how that sort of came out. But what I will say is, and it is a coincidence that Exeter City have featured in both parts of the vlog series so far. That's a pure coincidence. It's not meant to happen. But what's impressed me both times is the away support from Exeter. It's absolutely phenomenal. I know the numbers, weren't sky high, but it was a 12:30 kickoff. It's a fairly long journey to make. I had to set off really early that morning, and the fans just never stopped making noise. I mean, I know from a Cambridge point of view that it was a very uninspiring game. They created next to nothing. First half. Hence why you see on the vlog, I record the players coming out, and the next thing you see is the players going back in for half time. And it weren't me being lazy. that weren't me thinking, oh God, I can't be bothered to record. There was nothing going on. It was that dull of a first half. There was nothing going on. But if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube. Type in Over the Bar and you'll find it.
And it's the first episode of Over the Bar to ever be banned from certain countries, which is absolutely bizarre. Perhaps the North Koreans don't like the Football League Weekly. I heard Zelensky might not like the Football League Weekly either. So, yeah, we're officially banned from a couple of countries, Ukraine, North Korea. So there, something to put on our wall after this. But if you are watching live on YouTube at the moment, or Twitter at the moment, then head over to YouTube to get involved in the conversation. Good evening to Ballum in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Let's get on to the first bit of news of the episode. Luke Williams has been sacked as Swansea City head coach. He was sacked on February the 17th, and obviously this was due to a very poor run of form where they lost 7 of their last 9 matches, losing 8 of the last 10 in all competitions. So he was only in charge, Reese, for 13 months. For what it's worth, here is his overall record: 58 games, 19 wins, 11 draws, and 28 losses. What did you make of Luke Williams' run as Swansea manager? Because they haven't been able to get it right for quite a while now, have they?
Yeah, and that's probably the sort of best way to put it. It was only what, a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago now, where I can't remember who it was from Swansea came out and said they want more ambition, they want the club to be fighting, at a higher pedigree, at a higher degree. Do I think Luke Williams was the man to take them there? I do. I don't see much wrong with their recent form if you put into the fact of the circumstances around it. And when you look back at the January transfer window for Swansea, it was quite depressing, wasn't it? And what I mean by that is the squad itself. Before we look at who left, who we'll get on to in just a second, if you look at the squad itself, there were quite a number of deficiencies, weren't there? You could sort of poke holes at most positions and say they'd need another player there, they need another player here, they need, there's so many holes, weren't there, in the Swansea City side at the start of January that simply never were addressed. And I found myself finding throughout January, I was there thinking, okay, as long as they hold on to key players, I can see why they've done this. Not trying to spend too much money. Perhaps they were, constrained a little bit by FFP, by wages. I can see the logic. What I can't see the logic behind, however, is letting go of Matt Grimes. I think it's ridiculous. I think to let go of your captain to a championship rival in Coventry City is a huge blow. It's a huge blow. And to think there's going to be any momentum after letting him go, it is shocking, isn't it? It is. You can't let a player go of his caliber and expect still to be able to climb the league. But Swansea are sort of in a weird position, aren't they, within the league, where they are sort of bottom half, but they're not going to, spoiler alert, sorry, Swansea fans, you're not going to push for the playoffs. You're too far off that now, despite the fact it's wide open. Swansea are outside that sort of group of contenders, if you will. And then you look towards the bottom half of the table, and 8 points off 22nd, they really shouldn't be dragged into a relegation sort of dogfight either. So if we forget what I've just said a second, is it actually perhaps the best time to change manager? Almost whoever comes in now has a real good chance to rebuild without the fear of Swansea really sort of slipping backwards. I think whoever comes in next has the ability really to sort of push this side on. But the fact that they let Matt Grimes go in January really has me worrying about the recruitment policy. And I know you can look at things like, okay, look at the form over the course of the new year. You look at sort of where they were, sort of end of December, they were very close to playoffs, weren't they? Just a few points off the playoffs, but since then only taken 4 points out of a possible 27 games. So 4 points out of a possible 27 points. It's obviously you look at that and you think, okay, fair enough, there's a drop off in form. Of course there is, but these things take time. I mean, not replacing Matt Grimes, I don't say it's stupid on the show very often for people who know, but it's a stupid decision, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I'm just speculating here, but apparently, according to the press, Williams stating to the media that recruitment had been poor surprised their owner, hence the reason why he allegedly was sacked. But if we look at some of their recruitment, it has been poor. They lost club captain Matt Grimes to Coventry. Their only signing was Hand De La Cruz. I think I've absolutely butchered his name, on loan from Burnley. And in December, Williams is obviously linked to the West Bromwich Albion job, and his reluctance to deny these rumours, I think, frustrated the boardroom as well. Do you have any sympathy for him there, or do you kind of side with the owners that he shouldn't have been publicly speaking about poor recruitment, and perhaps he should have denied the rumours to West Brom back in December?
Um, to be honest, I'm probably on the side of Luke Williams. I think it's very rare in football, isn't it, that you get managers sort of be transparent. And really, I think he's saying exactly bang on. I don't think he's saying anything shocking, is he? I don't think he's coming out and saying the Earth's flat or the sky's purple. I think he's saying it exactly sort of how it is, isn't it? The recruitment was poor in January. There's no way to beat around the bush. The recruitment was poor, and it lacked quality. It lacked replacement for players. It's amazing for Swansea City fans when you say, look, we want to push this team further up the league into a playoff chasing team. Fantastic. As a neutral, I love to see it. I'm sure you do as well. I want to see as many teams as possible fighting for that top six. It makes, from a neutral point of view, it makes a very sort of entertaining race for promotion, and I enjoy it. But you can't have that without having the recruitment to back it up. You look at the Swansea City side. Is it top six material? No. Was it top six material with Matt Grimes in the side? Possibly not. But with Matt Grimes, you have the possibility, don't you, because of how well he can control the game, how well he can control the tempo of the game, the flow of the game. You have the potential with a player who can turn a game around, and now they've lost it. So it's another hole, really, within this Swansea City side, isn't it? And it's one that's not been addressed. And really, I do get the frustration from Luke Williams to go to the press. Should he have gone to the press, however, is a different story, isn't it? I think you've got to be careful, haven't you, when you're in jobs, and perhaps a bit of common sense sort of needs to be had. And when these rumours came out, look, potentially should have squandered them in the butt, maybe. And perhaps playing devil's advocate here, perhaps I can see why they perhaps didn't fully back him in January. Perhaps they saw it as, what's the point in backing Luke Williams when potentially he could be off, to West Brom. So I see that side of it. But then Swansea City as a whole, you're not going to push for top six where you're letting key players go and not replacing them.
Squandered them in the butt might be my new favourite saying. Absolutely love that one.
You know what? I was tempted to go whether between what is that phrase? Nipped in the bud. It's nipped in the bud.
Nipped in the
Nipped in the bud. I promise you, this
Brilliant.
is just Pepsi Max in this cup.
Oh,
I knew what I meant.
Before we started the show, I poured myself a beer because I normally have a beer on a Friday night, and I spilled the entire thing all over my desk before we went live. Kept the camera on so Rhys could literally just see me
Oh yeah.
mopping up my desk, which wasn't a brilliant start to the show. Brilliant indication in how this episode might go, but a poor indication of how Swansea's ownership might go is the fact that fans are beginning to turn on them. So who knows? Maybe it'll be fascinating to have a Swansea podcast on here one day just to talk through Andy Coleman's really poor ownership of the club. Coleman must be a very, is a bad surname to have in football, really, because John Coleman is a bit of a controversial character. I think speaking a bit of bollocks here, he's actually the Accrington Stanley manager. But you get what I'm trying to say. So Alan Sheehan, he is their interim manager. During his last spell, he had 3 wins in about 7 games. Fans on Twitter stated that they shouldn't keep Sheehan for more than 1 game due to his previous poor spell as interim manager. Some fans fear a slide towards relegation unless deeper changes happen. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Sheehan because I don't really think it's worth it, considering he's just the interim manager. Let's talk through the managerial odds. Eric Ramsey, who is currently Minnesota United manager, he is 2-1 to take over. It's worth stating that the MLS season is just about to get underway. Des Buckingham is 3-1 to take over. Joint 3-1 with Jesse Marsh, who is also 3-1. And turn away, Swansea City fans, but Alan Sheehan is 4th favourite to take over. He is 8-1. So a couple of names that jump off the page for me there, Rhys, is Jesse Marsh and Eric Ramsey. It seems as though they're looking into the American market for their next managerial appointment. I don't know too much about Eric Ramsey, so I won't discuss him, but Jesse Marsh, we remember him from Leeds United. Got them relegated, obviously. Didn't do a brilliant job at Leeds at all. Am I right in saying that despite being in English football for about 2 years, that Jesse Marsh is still a relatively unknown quantity in regards to the Championship and what he could do at another club in the Championship that hasn't got the resources that Leeds have?
I think it's an interesting debate because, like I said, when we mentioned Jesse Marsh, understandably, understandably, the first thing comes to mind is the Leeds relegation, isn't it? And how poor Leeds were. Um, the problem is that I look at this Swansea City board and do I think they'll be able to back a project? Do I think they'll be able to back a manager? No, I don't. Because they didn't do so, did they? For Luke Williams in the January window. Um, if it was Jesse Marsh coming into a different sort of mid-table championship club, I'd be very excited. I think he's a good manager who could do a good job to where Swansea City are, but I just worry about the board and the limitations, you know, that the board are going to sort of set on him. I like the idea of Jesse Marsh coming into the mid-championship. I think he'd be a success at Swansea because I do think he can sort of manage higher up the pyramid than sort of mid to lower end championship. So I like the appointment if it's going to be a project, but my limitations and the thing just keep hitting me is the fact that the board didn't go out to replace Matt Grimes, who was the most influential Swansea City player, wasn't he? For a number of seasons now, and definitely throughout the first half of this season, without replacing him, without actually proper backing him. And I know we look at this Swansea City side and say it's not top six quality, that's because it's not. To put it very straight, it's not. When you look at sort of standout players, and the first player really, when I go through the squad that really sort of excited me was Pert Harris on loan. Can't remember who's on loan. I'll say Chelsea, I think. On loan from Chelsea from Swansea City, and he's the first player really that actually gets me thinking. Oh, he's got a bit about him. He's a player that I'm excited by. He's young. He's raw and he's only getting on the bench for Swansea City at the moment. Anyway, only getting on the bench for the Swans. So I think this is a squad that needs a big overhaul. It needs players to come in, and Jesse Marsh would be, I think, a good addition. I just don't have confidence in the board and how much they're actually going to fund him.
Let's move on to another manager who's currently under pressure. We'll talk about the current developments in a minute there. Michael Carrick I'm going to say was allegedly under pressure at Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have suffered 6 losses in the last 7 games, only winning 3 in the last 15 across all competitions, and they're in 11th place at the moment in the championship, 4 points off playoffs with 14 games left to go. So, according to some media reports this week, Rhys, Michael Carrick was under significant pressure. Some of the key issues affecting Michael Carrick's positions was their January signings: Morgan Whittaker, Iheanacho, Samuel Ling Jr. I know we haven't got much time, but allegedly they haven't settled in very well. Fans weren't happy about Emmanuel Latte being sold to Atlanta United and Tommy Conway being brought in, but ultimately lacking in sharpness up front. It's also worth noting that they've conceded as many goals as Hull City, who are 21st at the moment. And Carrick's attacking reshuffle against Watford the other week led to boos from fans. So before we go into the current developments, because I see most people in the chat at the moment well, Tommy Conway's just scored, as he put into the private chats that we have on StreamYard. So a bit of an update there, as Middlesbrough are currently facing Bristol City. But back onto track a minute. Before we go into the current developments, what do you make of Middlesbrough? And we can have a decent debate on this, but what do you make of Michael Carrick and how he's been doing so far at Middlesbrough? He's been there for quite a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, he was appointed, weren't he, back in October of 2022, I want to say, at Middlesbrough. And before I get into what my opinion is, because we have a good debate about this in a second, I'm going to sort of, and people hate it, I've got messages before, I'm going to sit on the fence for the first sort of part of this discussion. I can already see people messaging me. It's happened before, I've done this, and people messaged me and said you can't do that. What I will say, first of all, is I don't think that Michael Carrick has much time left, or there's reason to believe that he won't have much time left at Middlesbrough. And the thing that gets me is the fact that, okay, they've got a good team on paper. They're pushing for the playoffs, which is what I think, if we're honest with ourselves, is what we expected from this Middlesbrough side, wasn't it? To sort of be in and around that discussion. They got a game in hand above some teams slightly higher than them in the table. But the problem is with Middlesbrough, they've spent a lot of money, haven't they? I know they've just sold Latte there for a reported fee of around sort of £25 million with add-ons, but they spent a lot of money. And are they really in a better position than what they were before they started spending money? The sort of hard truth is that they're not. It's and when you lose a player as influential as Latte there, and I'll get your opinion on this in a second. When you get rid of a player like, or sorry, I should say sell, should I not get rid? When you sell a player of Latte Lud's quality and bring in Kelechi and Acho, I'm sorry, but that's not an upgrade. I don't see that as an upgrade. I don't think he's any better really than what they had. Then you look at their recent form; that they've lost 5 of their last 6. They're 11th in the league. It's just not inspiring, is it? I'm going to flip it over to what I actually believe because I can't. That debate actually hurt me to say. So I'm a big fan of Michael Carrick. I think he's a young, upcoming coach, young English coach, and we should all be behind him. And I think the job that he's doing at Middlesbrough does deserve some credit. I think, in a way, we have to realise that recent form isn't permanent. And okay, they're in a bit of a sticky patch right now, Middlesbrough, but it doesn't mean that this is the true Middlesbrough coming out. It doesn't mean that this is going to be their form for the rest of the season. It's simply a sticky patch, and every team in the league has it, don't they, at some point? And I just think this is when Middlesbrough's sort of sticky patch is within the season. You look through it at the squad, and there's so much quality in there, isn't there? I mentioned before Ian Nacho not being better than Taylor, but still a very capable championship level striker. I think Ian Nacho. Tommy Conway has scored tonight. You look at the defensive improvements, the like of George Edmondson become permanent, didn't he, in January from Ipswich? You look at Vandenborg, you look at Morgan Whittaker, you look at Finn Azaz, who only makes the bench. How? How is he only making the bench? This is the quality that Middlesbrough do have at their disposal. And I think, in a way, we just need to be patient. I know you can look at memes that went around after that defensive calamity. I think it was at home v Sheffield Wednesday. We were discussing that, weren't we? I think it was at home v Sheffield Wednesday. And you look at that and you can say, okay, it's a bit of a mess, but the quality within this side still inspires me. I just see it as a bit of a sort of sticky sort of run of form, but the quality they've got in this side, they'll be finishing top 6. I am confident they'll be finishing top 6.
Well, the recent developments is that Teesside Live reported that owner Steve Gibson has decided to back Michael Carrick. Fans were divided on this decision. Some supported Gibson's patience, citing Carrick's 40+% win rate since October 2022 and his brilliant development of young players. And others worried about their defensive lapses, their very inconsistent form, and the potential of potentially missing out on the playoffs. Allegedly, according to TalkSport, Steve Cooper has potentially been linked as a possible successor to Michael Carrick should he be sacked. But yeah, my opinion is very much the same as yours, really. Though I do think he's been there for quite a while, since 2022. He's been given quite a lot of money to spend as well, so I don't know how much longer he's got, because ever since his days, I know he was a former player as well, obviously at Manchester United, but I'm talking as a coach. Ever since his time before he was at Middlesbrough as a United coach, there was a lot of kind of like plaudits and goodwill surrounding how good a manager he is. And I do think he's a brilliant coach. I think he's an absolutely brilliant manager, but he's been there long enough now where really they should have maybe have been promoted to the Premier League. There is certainly that debate to be had. But I'm sure in the next couple of weeks on the Football League Weekly, we'll be talking in more detail about Michael Carrick, whether or not he should have been sacked or not. Or maybe if he does get sacked between now and the next episode, because we've got an absolutely brilliant record of managers being sacked immediately after releases of this podcast, then who knows? We'll discuss it then as well. So the main talking point of today's show is the fact that Gary Monk has been sacked after just 12 months in charge at Cambridge United. They're currently bottom of the table in League One, 8 points off safety, 1 win in 13 league matches, 9 win in 49 across all competitions. And Rhys, you were at their last game, which is a 1-0 home loss to Exeter City. When you were at that game, just how bad were they? Because they have got quite a few veterans in their squad. Morrison at the back, who I think is probably about 38 now. Elias Kachunga, who is 34 years old. What did you make of them? How poor were they?
I make no exaggeration when I say that literally nothing happened in that first half. The players came out, and you may as well have slept for 45 minutes. I have a big thing when I'm at games. I won't go to use the restrooms, or I won't go to get drinks during the game because I simply don't want to miss anything, especially when I'm vlogging the game. I don't want to miss anything happening. I may as well have just got the later train and joined the game in the second half because from both sides, but especially from Cambridge, being at home, that first half was dire. And I don't want to use sort of strong words and end up sort of eating them after the show, but it really was dire from Cambridge. Morrison at the back was ineffective. I thought Kachunga was frustrating to watch. But the thing that really sort of stuck with me, and the thing I'm sort of taking away from that, especially from that first half, especially, is Loft up front. He didn't seem to give a fuck, to put it straight. He didn't seem to care. He was only interested in the ball if it was coming towards him. He won't make an effort to sort of go towards it. It was always it has to come through himself, and it was so frustrating. I came into this game thinking, right, okay, this is a chance for Cambridge United to sort of try to climb up the table a little bit, get out of that sort of bottom four in League One against an Exeter City side who were also low on confidence based on their league form. I know they just took Nottingham Forest to penalties in the game before that, but purely within the league form, they were very low on confidence. So I was thinking, okay, this is a good chance for this Cambridge United side. Go and express yourself, get the reins off, and just take the game to them. They never done that. And it really took sort of 55, 60 minutes before we saw any sort of routine, any sort of passing game from Cambridge United. It just seemed to take an age. Everything was slow. Everything was a slow build. There was no intensity. There was no passion from the players on the pitch, especially for the first hour. And really, around the sort of maybe 65th minute or so, just before the Exeter goal. I think Exeter scored in the 73rd, I think. And around the 65th was the first sort of time that we saw Cambridge actually getting forward. It was the first time we saw them being a bit more expansive, taking the game to the away side. And what happened? They switch off. And I've got a feeling this has been the theme of Cambridge United's season because we're not experts. We don't get to watch every game, but simply being around the atmosphere at the ground, and you get a feel, don't you, at times for how the season has sort of been. And there was a great conversation in front of me before the game. Two guys in front of me, had a good laugh from top people, and one of them asked the other guy. He went, "So what do you reckon today? Then are we going to win?" And he went, and the other guy went, I'm confident. I'll say 2-0." And the guy he was talking to went, "I guarantee you now, we don't see two goals at home for the rest of the season." I'll tell you what, he is absolutely spot on because playing like that, they won't score, mate. It was embarrassing at times to watch, and they totally switched off. That goal, it was really poor to concede. Don't get me wrong, it's a great header from Josh McGuinness, really into the corner of the net. But Caleb Watts gets the freedom of the Abbey stage. We don't need to put that ball into him and put it onto the forehead of McGuinness, and it is really poor. And Cambridge United, it's a nice ground. If you haven't been to the Abbey, get yourself down there. The walk from Cambridge North Station, you don't feel like you're in a city centre. I can't remember if I've mentioned it on the vlog or not, because like I say, I edited so much of that out because typical timing. But the walk from North Station to the Abbey it's a fantastic walk. You get some really nice views as you sort of walk down, and you go in the ground. It's old school. It's fantastic, but there's so many empty seats, and the atmosphere is really poor. Understandably, no one's optimistic, no one's happy, and I think at times we sort of sit on the show and we can sort of predict what happens at a football club, but when you see a team like that who are so sort of down in the docks, if you like, I'm forgetting all of them the phrases tonight, aren't I? When they're so down in down in the docks and squandered in the bud. Don't clip this up. But
Squandered in the butt. I thought you said squandered in the butt earlier, by the way. That's why I started laughing.
Scotland and down in the docks. But I was so disappointed from what I saw from Cambridge. It was there was no fight. It was like they were playing as a relegated team, and it was their first game in League Two. That was really the impression that I got, and it seems like a mammoth of a task for Neil Harris if he's going to keep this side up. I don't see it.
Yeah, and I agree here. And, like, I think Cambridge fans relatively happy to see Gary Monk go. His career's been really bizarre though, because he got Swansea obviously to the Premier League about a decade ago, and at one point he was a really highly sought after young manager. But God knows what happened. He went to Birmingham City, didn't do too well at Birmingham City, and now he's just been sacked from Cambridge. It is worth noting though that last season he led Cambridge to safety, finished 18th place, and ultimately couldn't replicate the brilliant form towards the end of the season that they had last year this season. A lot of fans have stated that a tactical shift to possession based football clashed with their traditional low block approach. So Neil Harris has returned. His second stint begins. He was previously named Cambridge United manager from December 2023 to February 2024 before leaving for Millwall. He left Millwall in an absolutely brilliant place in the Championship, which I think quite a few people tend to forget. He did a brilliant job in returning there. And Mark Bonner, who is a very familiar name to the Football League Weekly and to all League One and League Two fans as well, he returns as Director of Football. And he was previously Cambridge head coach until 2023. So, what do you make of Neil Harris going to Cambridge? Because when I was doing my research earlier on, there were quite a lot of outlets that mistakenly stated that Neil Harris had been sacked by Millwall. When he had actually left, he stated his desire to leave, and he left them in an absolutely brilliant place, I think, in and around the playoffs at that time. So, what do you make of him returning to Cambridge? Because this may be me being a pessimist here, but I reckon he's more or less already managing a League Two club, and he might as well just be preparing for next season already.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think until you watch this Cambridge United side actually play, I think it's so difficult, really, to tell you how poor they are. It's no surprise to see they've conceded the second most goals in the league. The only team in the league who have conceded more goals is Peterborough at 58. It's there is nothing about this Cambridge United side that inspires me. It's you can look from a sort of paper point of view and say, okay, Loft up front should be doing a little bit more. Morrison at the back is a good option to have, very experienced. Elias Kachunga is a little bit of quality that can perhaps try to drag them out. But the team is so underwhelming, is so poor. You talk there about a low block into a more sort of possession-based traditional style of football. I don't see either of that last weekend. I didn't see either of those styles coming through. It was a mess. It was a car crash. You know, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, it wasn't even having possession for possession's sake. It was at 1-0 down, still knocking the ball around the back, still going backwards. And even there as a neutral and trying not to show any allegiance to either side, it was frustrating. I'll tell you that much. It was very frustrating that there was no urgency from this Cambridge United side. And I think I said it. I kept it in the vlog as I was walking back to North Station. I think I said this is a League Two club, and I absolutely stick by that. I don't see that there's a chance that this club can be kept up simply because I don't think there's any care from the players out on the pitch. I don't think there's a real sort of togetherness. I don't think there's a team spirit. And those are the simple three things that you need if you had to pull out of a relegation zone. And they haven't got that. And the first thing I thought of, interesting to see whether you agree on this or not, actually. The first thing I thought of when it was announced that Neil Harris was coming in as head coach was it's like taking back an ex, isn't it, who's cheated on you in the past and thinking that they've changed and thinking they'll be a better person. And by the way, any first-time viewers listen to this episode, I like my analogies. I like comparing stuff to other situations. There's another classic for you there. But that's what I feel about it. It's like taking back an ex who's cheated on you because he jumped ship, didn't he? As soon as Millwall came sniffing, he jumped and he left Cambridge. You know, he was only there for what, two and a bit months, if that. But as soon as Millwall came knocking, he was gone. And I sort of understand why. He also has previous allegiance to Millwall, both in a coaching role and a playing role. He is their all-time top goal scorer. But to me, it leaves a real sort of bad taste in the mouth of us Cambridge United fan. And I just fear in the back of my mind, if I was a Hughes fan, he's going to do it again. If another club comes knocking in a potential higher place within the EFL structure, he'll do the exact same thing again. And I just don't know if he's the man long term. Is he the man who wants a project? I don't see it. So I just think as soon as a Millwall come knocking or a team of similar pedigree, he'll be gone again. And really, what Cambridge need is stability. He isn't stability, is he?
No, and like he left Millwall quite abruptly as well, to be fair. So, like Millwall fans might be feeling the same there. But in regards to his return, some fans are calling it a sensational move, whereas there are quite a few skeptics after his abrupt exit for Millwall in 2024. But I think Bonner's return has added more intrigue to the Cambridge United fan base because obviously many view him as a club legend, but some find the quick reunion really strange, especially since he is returning as director of football. But something that made me laugh when I was reading Twitter earlier on, some fan, like a fan who was happy about Neil Harris returning to the club, felt it was long overdue, calling it 20 games too late. So if that isn't an indictment into how bad Gary Monk had done there and into what fans thought of him, then I don't know what is. One final question on the subject. This weekend, we are currently recording on the 21st of February, so on the Friday. So this game might have already gone by the time you listen to this. Stockport County are playing Cambridge United. This is a very early test for Neil Harris, isn't it, Rhys? I know we've been incredibly negative in regards to their chances of staying up, but could he pull off the great escape?
Almost talking when Mike muted there.
You did it
No, he
then.
can't. Yes. Mate, genuinely, it happens, though, don't it? It's so easy to do, though, isn't it? When you get into a conversation and you get into a rhythm. Um, no, he can't. I hate to be pessimistic, and people know for me for being optimistic and being positive. I don't see it here. I don't see how he can. I highlighted at the start of the vlog when I was outside the Abbey. And by the way, I've got to say, when you're recording by yourself, holding a camera still like that and trying to sort of walk along and show views is really blooming difficult. But what we'll say is within that sort of pre-match sort of talk I had there, I highlighted the Exeter City game as a winnable game because I looked at the Stockport County game next, and even I think it's Crawley, then Stevenage after that. I think, don't quote me. Um, and Exeter, should they got a win there, okay, they're not expected to beat Stockport, but then Crawley afterwards, who are a club within that same sort of relegation zone as Cambridge, could give them a lot of confidence and could be the start of the escape. The problem is to lose that game against Exeter with as little fight, with as little passion as they did, has me wondering where the next win is going to come from. And even in, I think it's about a week and a half's time, I think I want to say Crawley away. I think I want to say they got Crawley away, and I look at that game, and I think that's the game that's going to relegate Cambridge because I don't see them winning another game of football because of how poor they were. If you can't get yourselves up as a team against an Exeter City side who are very much within that same sort of predicament as yourselves, how are you going to get yourselves in a fighting spirit against a Stockport County side with respect to Exeter City, with a lot more quality about them and a lot more sort of showcase about them? So I don't see Neil Harris and Mark Bonner being able to keep this side up. I think it's a good appointment, Mark Bonner coming in as director of football. I'm a big fan of it. He's coached at the club before, hasn't he? He knows the club, as the old saying goes, and I like the pair coming in. Problem is, it feels like they're boarded a sinking ship, doesn't it, at Cambridge? I think it's a big clear out needed. And I don't repeat too much from what I said from the vlog, but I do believe that when Cambridge United go down, they're going to find themselves in League Two for a number of seasons. I just think they're going to need a big clear out. There's a lot of players from what I saw that simply don't care, and that has to change before Cambridge United have any sort of success.
If you are watching over on Twitter at the moment, then head over to YouTube. We just retweeted the link of the YouTube link. So get involved there and get involved in the conversation. Give us your thoughts about Gary Monk being sacked by Cambridge and Neil Harris returning. And good evening to Ballum as well. I see Leicester City are losing by 3 goals at home to Brentford. We'll talk about that at the end of the show because I'd quite like to quickly touch upon, should we not be going on for too long, about some of the sides at the bottom end of the table at the moment in the Premier League. So on to some League Two news at the moment, and ASAP Rocky, who again, I I know he's a rapper. That is all. He is allegedly going to be taking over at Prenton Park as the new owner. Again, this has taken me a lot of research because I had to get myself up to speed with what was really going on. He's just been cleared of 2 felony counts related to a 2021 altercation with ASAP Relly. That's absolutely ridiculous. Can't believe that is actually a sentence that I've muttered on this show. Rocky's 15 million bid for an 80% stake in Tranmere Rovers is now back on track, and American investment consortium led by lawyer Joe Tapocana, who has previously been linked to Roma, Bologna, Venezia and Spal. He is, well, I guess you can say that he's leading the takeover. So, I have no idea who ASAP Rocky is. I know that he's married to Rihanna. ASAP Rally, it sounds like two really bizarre names for siblings right there. What do you make of ASAP Rocky taking over at Tranmere Rovers? And if you haven't a clue what to make of it, which is basically how I feel, then what do you make of these rich Hollywood celebrities taking over at English football clubs? A bit like Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney at Wrexham.
I know there's similarities between this ASAP Rocky and Ryan Reynolds, Rob McAnally, but I think this is two very different situations. And what I mean by that is I think Tranmere Rovers are in a whole load of trouble towards the wrong end of League Two. They could easily find themselves relegated, I believe, at the end of the season. And I think the last thing they needed was someone. Again, I'm not going to pretend I know this guy's life story. I've literally got a few notes to my right hand side of me about who this guy actually is. I've got no idea what he does. A US rapper, apparently, but I've never heard his music. I see him purely as bad news. He's almost got a 25-year prison sentence and somehow got found not guilty. Like I say, I don't know about it. I'm not here to speculate. I'm not going to do that on the podcast. But this guy just seems to be bad news, and I fear about the poor sort of publicity that can come from this. I don't think he's particularly what Tranmere Rovers need at this moment in time. I think they need a stable owner who's purely going to be good for this team and sort of push them up the sort of League Two table. I mean, even Joe Takapina, and I know that is an awful pronunciation, but that's what I do, who's an American criminal, and even this, sorry, because I don't know who these people are. He's an American criminal defense lawyer, media personality, sports executive. He seems like bad news to me as well, and I don't know if I'm being too negative. Tell me if I am in the chat. If I'm being too negative, tell me. I see him as bad news as well. Between sort of 2011 and current time now, he's been involved with 4 different Serie A clubs. What's his objective here? What's his sort of mission? Is he simply in to sort of try to make a quick buck? Is it just a sort of fairy tale job, perhaps, of trying to get your finger into as many football clubs as potential as what he could have? I just don't see the positives. I don't see good news here with either of these. I think Joe Takapina, I see him as purely bad news. I think there's nothing wrong with getting into football clubs, and trying to improve them, pumping money in. I'm a big fan of that, but he never seems to stay at a club for long. I mean, 2011 joined AS Roma and almost instantly made himself the chairman of board of directors almost straight away. He left 3 years later. And then he joined Bologna 2015 and left there a few months later. He never sticks. Excuse me. He never sticks at one club for any length of time. And I just think that when you're within the EFL, you have to do that. You can't simply join a club like Tranmere, who, with respect, are in a world of trouble right now. I think we're going to agree on that. And simply just come in for a year or two, pump some money in, and everything's going to be hunky dory because it's not, to put it straight. It's not, and this is where I see the sort of disparities between what's happening at Wrexham and Birmingham and what's happening here at Tranmere Rovers is that neither set of the before mentioned ownerships came in with any sort of bad news, with any negative ties. And I just fear this is going to end badly. I feel like this is a trendy, if you like, a trendy sort of purchase for a thing to buy. I feel like it's a thing out of pure boredom. I mean, this isn't I mean, I know I'm what 25 this year, but this isn't a young bloke either. He's got two kids with Rihanna, and I just think, come on a little bit, show a little bit more maturity. You shouldn't be out firing guns in parking lots and all this. I just see it as purely bad news.
Ian, it's a damn good job that we have teams like Cambridge, as my team Rotherham, led by the Fat Controller, have been abysmal this season, and will be lucky to stay up. Yeah, good job that we have more traditional teams who don't sell out to the likes of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, who aren't owners, by the way, in the EFL. In case you're an American just tuning in for the ASAP Rocky talk, it's a comment made there by Ballum. So, yeah, Tranmere chairman Mark Palios is very enthusiastic for the move and the takeover to happen. He welcomed the sprinkling of stardust that Rocky could bring. And there is a huge possibility of a Wrexham style documentary as well, which okay, a controversial opinion here. People might hate me in the comments for saying this, but I am absolutely sick and tired of these football documentaries. The only one that I wanted to see was the Plymouth Argyle one that has been squandered in the butt, or whatever you said earlier on. I'm simply sick and tired of these football documentaries. So yeah, feel free to call me out if you absolutely love the idea of ASAP Rocky doing a documentary at Tranmere Rovers. But fans' reaction, initial excitement in October 2024 when the news first broke out, and a lot of the concerns are just surrounding their current League 2 position, 22nd, just 2 points above relegation. 7 consecutive away defeats under manager Nigel Adkins. Let's quickly talk about Nigel Adkins here because we haven't spoken a lot about Tranmere on this show. I think Ballum asked us this in the chat earlier on. How much longer does he have at the club? And could a potential change in owner get him out of the club quicker?
Yeah, I think it does. I think whenever you get a new ownership come into a club, the first thing they look for is, to put it straight, is their man, isn't it? They look for their leader, who they probably had an eye on for a little while, and bring in a new face. But I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, to see Nigel Adkins go relatively soon. There's nothing to be positive about, is there, when you look at there's nothing positive when you look at Tranmere Rovers, is there? You look at goals conceded. They've conceded the joint worst goals in the league, 49 goals conceded. Goals scored, they've only scored 22. That's the worst in the league. The away form is the worst in the league. And the home form isn't much better, but that's really all Tranmere Rovers are sort of surviving on at the moment, is the home form. And they are, aren't they, in serious danger of being relegated this season. I know back at the start of the month, that Mark Palios sort of delivered a sort of vote of confidence, didn't he, towards Nigel Adkins, and sort of pushed his manager on, say he's going to be back, say he's got his full support in an open letter to the fans. And that, I sort of respect it in a way. I like when a club sticks by their man, but when all the stats are against you, where's the positivity? Where within that do you see, right, okay, this is how we're going to change because of this reason, or we're not conceding too many goals, we can build on that, or we're scoring goals, but they're not. They've only scored 2 goals in 4 games this month, and that really tells you the story down of their season. Okay, there's a couple of good draws in there. There's a draw against MK Dons. That's a good result. But the problem is there's 2 big losses there, isn't there? There's 2, not big in terms of scoreline, but big in terms of effect. 2 big losses against Salford and Colchester United. And I think that really is sort of showing why Tranmere are where they are. And then even you look at the next two games for them, and I don't see how they're gonna sort of pull themselves away from that bottom two. Notts County away is a very tough game for anybody in this league, and in Accrington at home, the game after that is a huge game, isn't it? That could potentially go down as a relegation 6-pointer within the fact that should Accrington beat Tranmere Rovers, which I think they will, then Accrington pull themselves away from that sort of bottom two, if you like, and then it becomes a three-horse race in terms of who gets relegated. Like I like to see a manager sort of get boosted and get in the press and get a vote of confidence. I like that. What I can't get behind is when the stats aren't supporting it. And mentioned in the chat there about Morecambe. But even Morecambe are in a world of trouble themselves, aren't they? They've got Walsall next and then Gillingham away. So they've got a couple of tough games coming up. Same with Carlisle, we're at bottom of the league. They got Gillingham and Barrow in the next two. It is going to be, I think, a three-horse out. That again, for the third time episode, is probably the wrong phrase to use, but it's going to be a sort of three-horse race, isn't it, for that sort of bottom two? I don't see either of the bottom three of Morecambe, Carlisle, or Tranmere being anything better than each other. I think they're all equally sort of as poor as each other have been this season, aren't they? But I wouldn't be surprised to see Nigel Atkins go. I think it's almost normal, isn't it? When new ownership comes in, they want their own man to lead the ship.
I agree, and I'm going to play a game with those who are listening to audio only, as if you're watching live on YouTube at the moment. It might spoil the game. This game is called Nigel Adkins or David Brent. So I'm going to play the only clip. I'm going to play a clip.
Well, you have to be in the present moment. You can't send back time. You know, the past's history. The future's a mystery. Today's a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Nigel Adkins or David Brent. If you had that kind of manager as a motivational, basically, if he was a motivational speaker, he could be making an absolute fortune, couldn't he, Rhys?
I mean, that is quality. That is stuff I'm going to take away from this episode, because that phrase is absolute quality, isn't it? But unfortunately, you don't build a reputation, do you, through what you say, and the job really at Tranmere is a tough one. So if we sort of conclude there's going to be two of Tranmere, Carlisle, and Morecambe that get relegated out of League Two this season, who do you reckon are the two that are going to go down? So I think Carlisle are probably not the favourites, but I think are in the most trouble. And I can't decide between Morecambe and Tranmere. I'd like to see Morecambe stay up, but I'm seeing nothing from Tranmere in terms of giving me a reason as to why they're going to stay up. So who are the two do you reckon that could face the drop?
Personally, I reckon Carlisle probably, because they've been absolutely abysmal. Bottom of the league, significant difficulties both home and away. And I think with their latest defeat being a 1-0 loss to Newport County, I think it only really confirms that with just 3 wins and 22 defeats in their last 30 league games, that they're more or less a basket case. I know they're, I think, 6 points from safety. I might be wrong there. But, you know, with the state of what's happening both on and off the pitch, and the fact that Tranmere could potentially be getting new ownership, I don't even know whether the new ownership bounce even exists, then I don't know what you think, Rhys, but Carlisle have to be the favourites to go down in League Two.
Yeah, they are, and it's quite a sad sort of state of affairs, isn't it? I mean, they played sort of 31 games, there's 6 points from any kind of safety, and I don't see how they're going to do it. I've seen nothing from this season in terms of Carlisle that's going to make me say, okay, they're going to stay up because of X reason, or they got a chance because of this. There is just nothing there, is there? I mean, you look at, like I say, the 2 games coming up for Carlisle, Gillingham at home, Barrow away. I can't see Carlisle getting anything out of those 2 games. And the reason why I sort of compare it to a bottom 3, if you like, despite the fact it's a bottom 2, is the fact that Morecambe were in the same position, with the fact that I don't think they're going to get anything from their next 2 games. And guess what? Tranmere are in the same position. I don't think they're getting anything from their next 2 games. So I just think it's going to be so tight, this relegation battle within League Two. I have got a soft spot for Morecambe, so I want to see them survive, but I just don't see anything from either team in the sort of bottom 3, if you like, that's going to inspire me to say that they're going to stay up. I think that you look at other teams sort of in and around that patch. I think Accrington are going to be absolutely fine, and I don't see Harrogate as any sort of potential to be a relegation candidate, at least for this season. So I think it's going to be two of the before three mentioned teams.
Yeah, I bet our mate Andy Holt will be very happy to hear that you don't rate them for relegation this season. But that is all that we have for the show this week. We are going to go through the questions before we do go off the air. So if you're watching over on Twitter, as we currently have about 58 people watching live on Twitter at the moment, then jump over to the YouTube. The link is on Over the Bar's Twitter page. So get involved in the YouTube discussion and ask away your questions. Just going to quickly read through them. Whilst I'm reading through the questions, Rhys, remind people again where they can find your new Football League Weekly Travels vlogs.
So all of them are uploaded to Over the Bar YouTube channel. Type in Over the Bar, you'll see it under live because we sort of premiere each episode, if that makes sense. So it goes out at a certain time. You know what I mean if you're around on YouTube. So when you go on Over the Bar, hit the live section, or no, it's not live. Hit the live section, and you'll see the travel vlogs put into there. What we may do eventually is perhaps sort of put them into its own folder or playlist as I sort of go around more and more and accumulate more. The question there from Ian Bradley in the chat: where next? Potentially, I've got a special episode coming up. Potentially, I'm not going to give much away from it. Potentially a special episode coming up next, but I'm not decided where I'm off to. But I'll leave a little teaser in there for you.
So here's a good one from Ian Bradley. Do you guys think the EFL have almost manufactured the Virtu, have I pronounced it right? The Virtu Trophy
Yeah.
in order to get Wrexham the Birmingham final. So even when Ipswich were in League One, I didn't give a shit about the Tin Pot Trophy, Paint Trophy, Johnston's Paint Trophy. It's been called absolutely anything and everything. But in the last couple of years, the attendances have been absolutely brilliant in the finals. We could potentially be getting a Wrexham v Birmingham final as well. So do you reckon it's been manufactured by the EFL? Because Wrexham versus Birmingham, if we're going to be totally honest here, that is a blockbuster final, especially given how Wrexham have such a global appeal now, a massive appeal in the US as well. That is a global game. So do you reckon it's been manufactured by the EFL?
I'm not one for conspiracy theories. Wink, wink. You know I am. Yes, it has, hasn't it? There's because I think if you look at a sort of game within the two lower leagues that's going to attract the most media attention, the most attention sort of globally, get the most eyes on a particular game, it would be Birmingham v Wrexham, Wrexham versus Birmingham, wouldn't it? No other fan base within the lower two divisions can pull as many viewers as what these two clubs can. It's no coincidence that they both got American backing. It's no coincidence that it's going to be the final, is it? That's absolutely real. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Jay Stansfield looks to be out, don't he, for a period of time. Came off injured, didn't he, during the victory over Bradford, I want to say, in the semis. Was it Bradford? Yeah, with Bradford won it.
Yeah, it doesn't look, according to news reports, it doesn't look as bad as they initially feared. So he won't be having surgery on it. A bit like in CISO when he got injured for us the other day. It's going to keep him out for a week or two, but it's not as bad as first feared.
Mate, my heart sunk when Enciso came off. It's our luck, isn't it? Over the last 2 years, we haven't been too unlucky with injuries. But when we don't want injuries, in the one season we don't want them, what happens? We get them all. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Birmingham do without the likes of Jay Stansfield for approximately the next 3 weeks. I think it'd be interesting and very intriguing to see how they get on. A player who's probably not getting the highlights he deserves at Birmingham, though, is Lyndon Dykes. Pop up with the occasional goal. His all-round play has been very, very good in recent weeks. I was impressed with him about a month or so back when I went up to Birmingham. He's not getting the plaudits, is he? Same as Alfie May. He's not getting the plaudits. But perhaps with Jay Stansfield being out for a few weeks, potentially could be a good chance for one of those two to sort of stick a big sort of claim in for that starting number 9 spot, because it wasn't too long ago, was it, that there was a big sort of news story breaking over Alfie May and Jay Stansfield and potential beef, potential rivalry within the same camp. They both want to be the starting number 9. It's since been revealed that apparently there's nothing, but there's always going to be little sort of disputes inside, isn't there? So it'd be interesting to see how Birmingham get on in the next few weeks without their main man, if you like.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure I'll be watching that final as it looks absolutely fascinating. I'm just going to quickly read through the comments again. The latest scores for those that are watching live. It's a bit irrelevant really if you're watching or listening back on repeat. Bristol City 0, Middlesbrough 1, and Burnley 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0. And Ian Bradley, in regards to Birmingham, Alfie May isn't a bad substitute. Dykes is the number one tattooed player in the EFL, and the runner-up is Sonny Bradley. I remember Sonny Bradley being absolutely brilliant at Luton Town as well. But we are going to wrap up the show now. We'll save the Premier League relegation talk for next week, as Ipswich, hopefully, touch wood, won't be in it. So where can people find you on X, Rhys?
You can find me on Twitter. It's never X.
Twitter. You heard nothing?
I had to think about what's my blooming username then. I don't know if you noticed. I had a total mind blank. I was thinking, is there an underscore somewhere in my name? No, there isn't, is there? It's at Rhys Curtis 14. And
you can find me on Twitter at OTB_Benjamin, and you can find us on Twitter at OverTheBarFB. You can also find us on YouTube if you are watching over on Twitter at OverTheBarFB as well. Just type up OverTheBarFB. We should be the first podcast that come up, or Over the Bar should be the first thing that come up, should I say. Of course, Rhys is doing his absolutely brilliant vlogs as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And before we do go off the air, I have an important message for all of you.
Let's be having you! Come on!
Oh dear.
Until next time, good evening, everybody.